So recently I noticed Ubisoft had a sale on the Far Cry franchise, and having played all but 2 of the Far Cry games, that being the first game and Blood Dragon, I thought we'd invest in a couple of them and do a quick review. I plan on doing a full Far Cry 3 game review, including my first ever playthrough of Blood Dragon, as it's basically more of a DLC for Far Cry 3 than a full game. So for Far Cry 3, I wanted to see if it was as good as I remember when it first came out. I was truly hyped for this back in 2012 and fully enjoyed playing it, with Vass being one of the best villains to appear in the video game and definitely in any Far Cry game. I played it for around 3 hours before I was hit with constant crashes to Far Cry 3, to the point where it just became completely impossible to play and corrupted my whole save file. I believe there is a potential fix for this in the community guides, but having played a load of old games recently where I've had to download mods to get them working, I was just a little bit burnt out with this, so decided that Far Cry 3 should go on the back burner for now, and I wanted to see if I could get Blood Dragon to work, because that's the one that I was most looking forward to, just me never playing it before. And luckily for me, it works straight away with no issues. And every now and then, you play a game that just gets it. No bloated open world, no endless checklists, no live service nonsense, just a game that knows exactly what it wants to be and absolutely commits to it. And Far Cry Blood Dragon is one of the best examples of that I've ever played. This is a game that doesn't care about realism, doesn't take itself seriously for even a second, and somehow ends up being one of the most fun, memorable Far Cry experiences ever made, and one of the best, if not the best Far Cry game I've ever played. Now let's start with the story, because honestly, this is where Blood Dragon immediately sets itself apart from any Far Cry game. The entire game is just a love letter and parody of 1980s action movies, stuff like Terminator, Robocop, Predator, Commando, Rambo, it's all there. Far Cry Blood Dragon doesn't just nod to the 80s action movies, it lives inside one. There isn't a deep, dramatic narrative with hidden motivations or emotional character arcs, and that's intentional. What makes a story have memorability here isn't its complexity, it's its absurd confidence in being a ridiculous old school action shooter with just the biggest 80s theme you've ever seen. You play as Rex Power Cole, possibly one of the best main character names I've ever seen. He is a cybernetical enhanced soldier brought back from the brink of death to do one thing: stop the rogue Colonel Sloan and his army of super soldiers. And eventually, the title enemies, Blood Dragons. The game throws exposition at you in the most wonderfully cheesy way possible. At the opening of the game, you're introduced to Colonel Sloan, the stereotypical evil commander with a love of power and laser tech, a host of enemies with the over-the-top code names and even more over-the-top voice lines, a world that's been infected with biotech monstrosities and military excess. Everything in the world reflects that aesthetic. There's no attempt at emotional finesse, instead you get one of the most intentional, overblown opening monologues filled with jargon, buzzwords and pure absurdity that shouldn't work but somehow just does. From mission to mission, the story unfolds like an 80s action movie directed by someone on a heavy synthwave diet. You've got to rescue important scientists, you infiltrate enemy bases with ridiculous guards, you receive constant commentary from your handler that has you laughing out loud. Blood Dragon takes all the classic plot beats from retro action movies, rogue generals, unstoppable soldiers, mutant monsters, and smashes them together with zero shame. And then you get the best part, the twist isn't really a twist at all. You see the big reveal coming from the first hour. The villain's motivations are ludicrous, the dialogue is purposely terrible. You're constantly hearing things like,
But Benji didn't.
I'm sorry, Rex. He was a good man.
No, Doc. He was a real American hero.
and when the game exaggerates these lines the way it does, you can't help but laugh. Even when the story delivers cutscenes, it does it so through an animated storybook sequences that feel like old 80s comic books, and they fit the tone perfectly. They don't slow things down, they don't try to be cinematic, they just tell you what's happening in the most entertaining way possible. At its core, the story isn't really about plot twists or character growth, it's about the experience. A sci-fi world that never stops winking at you, every line of dialogue straight out of an action movie B-list script, laser dragons, cyborgs and techno-mad science all living in the same absurd universe. It's both a parody and a homage to all at the same time, and the reason it works is because it never pretends to be anything more than what it is. A ridiculous 80s fantasy thrown into video game form. The synthwave music also just hits so well in this game and reinforces that feeling of being in some form of Rambo parody. From the retro sci-fi vibes to the explosive missions, Blood Dragon's story is hand down just a brilliant experience. And this is not even where the good stuff ends. Visually, Blood Dragon still looks great, and arguably has aged way better than the base game of Far Cry 3. Everything is drenched in neon blues and pinks, scanlines, VHS-style visual effects, retro-futuristic UI elements. It looks like a playable synthwave album cover. And look, the world itself isn't massive, but it doesn't need to be. The aesthetic carries everything. Whether you're sneaking through enemy bases or sprinting across open terrain, the game just oozes style. Even today, there's nothing else quite like it out there. And then the gameplay, well, at its core, this is still a Far Cry game. Outposts, stealth, open-ended combat, but it's trimmed down and refined. Outposts are a lot easier to conquer, but have a new element of being able to bring down a protective shield so you can join a Blood Dragon to just do all the heavy lifting for you. It's a real nice change to the game. One of the smartest design choices Blood Dragon makes is that from the start of the game you're fully powered up. You don't spend the first mission feeling weak or under-equipped. From the start you're a cybernetic killing machine with things like faster movement and stronger melee abilities. Then, once the game puts you back in a state where you're basically level 1, instead of unlocking abilities, you earn upgrades that enhance what you already have, which makes progression feel meaningful without slowing the game down. No choosing a path or anything, just straight up upgrades. By the time you hit max level, which is level 30, and that's pretty easy to hit, you are genuinely an unstoppable killing machine. And that power fantasy is exactly what the game is going for. It's also super nice to play a game without fall damage, meaning you can just launch yourself off the top of a building and slam down with a superhero-like landing. And then moving on to arguably one of the best things about Blood Dragon, which is the weapons. And the weapons in Blood Dragon deserve their own section because they're incredible. You've got the iconic cyber pistol that feels straight out of RoboCop, the Terminator-style shotgun, which, once fully upgraded, is honestly one of the most satisfying shotguns I've ever used in a video game. A laser rifle that eventually shoots unstoppable full-auto beams at people, a flamethrower and a minigun, because what else screams 80s other than a goddamn minigun? One of the best looking neon bows you've ever seen, and then finally an Arcstar beam cannon that trades your health for a super powerful beam. Everything feels powerful, punchy and fun to use. There's no filler here, every weapon feels deliberate and over the top in the best way possible. And for the 4 main weapons, that being the pistol, the shotgun, the assault rifle and the sniper rifle, there's around 10 optional upgrades for these weapons that take them from being powerful guns to just being the most ridiculous powerful weapons you've ever seen. For example, your shotgun starts off as a normal pump action lever shotgun that looks cool, does some good damage, but once you upgrade that gun to have its incendiary rounds, that thing just absolutely destroys everything in its path, and that is the same for every single one of those primary weapons. It changes them so much that it makes the grind to want to get the attachments unlocked worthwhile. Now, the overall concept of the Blood Dragons is absurd and brilliant. You come across them within the first around 20 minutes of gameplay, and you have that feeling that you must avoid them at all costs, with them being this massive, laser-eyed, completely lethal beast that if you're not prepared will take you down in seconds. And then later, once you're fully upgraded, they become part of the power fantasy, something you hunt rather than fear. You'll find yourself just launching yourself at them just to bring them down for that extra XP. In fact, enemy variety overall is pretty decent here. You've got things such as standard soldiers that are pretty easy to kill but become a bit of a handful if there's a few of them. Heavily armoured enemies that are such as flame troopers and minigunners which can pack a punch and become difficult to take down. We've got sniper units, Molotov units and hell, even zombies. Nothing revolutionary compared to Far Cry as a whole, but it all works perfectly within the scope of the game and really breaks the gameplay up with the different classes to take on. And then we've got to have a quick look at the missions, because one of the best parts of Blood Dragon is how it consistently delivers memorable missions, and that there's not many of them, but they stand out and will stick in your memory for a while, and all for the right reasons. I mean, the first mission has you on the side of a chopper with a minigun whilst an 80s track blasts out in the background. Then you move on to a incredible mission near the end that's basically a full parody of COD Zombies and a Doom style arena combat, and it's genuinely brilliant. And then finally you finish with just a ridiculous action-packed rail shooter as you're strapped to the back of a dragon with lasers just blowing everything up in your way. They just absolutely nail it. Now on the normal difficulty, the game took me around 6 hours to fully complete. And that includes me completing all side missions, collectibles, any optional content was completely done. And honestly, that's perfect. Nothing overstays its welcome or feels padded, nothing feels like busy work. Side activities are repetitive on paper, but because the movement is fast and you're just absurdly powerful, they're actually really enjoyable. The game is a perfect example of quality over quantity, something modern games desperately struggle with. I could have easily have played this for another 10 hours and not got bored, but like I said, 6 hours just felt perfect. Now, looking at the reviews at launch, Blood Dragon was very well received, praised for its humour, strong identity, tight pacing and willingness to be different. Fast forward today and its Steam reviews are overwhelmingly positive, with players still calling it one of the best Far Cry experiences ever, a perfect standalone expansion and a reminder when Ubisoft took creative risks. And honestly, I completely agree. This for me is by far the best Far Cry game I've ever played. I used to think that either Far Cry 2 or 3 was the best, and although I plan on go back to play those games, I really struggle to see them being as good as this. I genuinely can't remember the last time I had this much pure fun playing a video game. No frustration, no burnout, no stress, just constant enjoyment from start to finish. Blood Dragon doesn't try to be massive, doesn't try to be serious, it doesn't even try to appeal to everyone. It just does one thing and it does it exceptionally well. If you've never played it or skipped it because it felt like just DLC, you are genuinely missing out. I would recommend this game to anyone, especially with how cheap you can pick it up in the sales nowadays. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more like this, check out my video review playlist and drop a like and subscribe if you want to see just more of these kind of videos. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.